Hello, welcome to Racecraft once again. This is my 1986 Sigma, mint condition, only done about 41,000 Ks. It's a really nice car, but what it doesn't have is power steering. Now, I've got the hydraulic power steer box for it, the actual steering box. I've got the pump, I've got the steering column, everything else. But what I'd rather do is convert it to electric power steer. That way I don't have to worry about high pressure hoses, reservoirs, leaks or anything else. Because the car's only done 41,000 Ks, the manual steer box that's in this should still be in absolutely perfect condition. Now, it's still a 4-cylinder, but I've already put the big wheels on the back, which you may have seen my other video where I widened the wheels. They still look quite standard on the car, but they are 8 inches wide. The other thing that I've already done is I've done the big brake conversion on it. The brakes are VY Commodore, and I've just adapted the rotors onto the original Sigma hub. So I retain my 4-stud wheels and everything else, and these fit inside 15-inch wheels. I've also done the back. I've retained the Sigma rotors, but I've put the big VY Commodore calipers on it because they almost fit straight on. Anyway, let's get started on this electric power steer conversion. This is the Toyota Yaris electric power steering. Now, when you buy this from the wrecking yard, this is the way they like to send it to you, with everything stripped off it, which means that it's really of no use to you. You have to have the control module that just plugs into there. So if you're going to go ahead with this conversion, make sure that you get the control module. The other thing that you're going to need is the top half of the column that slips onto that end there, because you need that special spline that's inside there to mate with this column here. Then later on you're going to modify the top of this to suit the Sigma column. So you've got to have those parts. Now on the output side, you'll take this bracket off here because you're going to use these 2 bolt holes here to bolt your Sigma column and column extension onto that. So that's got to come off. Now this spline here is 11/16 36 spline. Did a little bit of research and I've discovered that it is also a Chrysler spline. So with any luck, you will get this shaft, which fits straight on there obviously, from the wrecker when you buy it. You don't need to worry about the universal that goes on that end, but you do want this one if you can get it. Now if you can't get this one, it's not the end of the world, because that Chrysler uni will fit on there. So they're the parts that you really need to get. So you've got to have the module to control it. You want the top half of the column so that you can modify that to take all your Sigma switch gear and steering wheel and everything else. And you want that universal off the bottom. This is the universal. It's a Borgeson join that fits straight onto the end of the Toyota output side of the steering box. Beauty of this is that yes, fits straight onto there, and it's double D, 3/4 double D on the opposite end. So what I've done on this particular one, so I've taken the Sigma lower part of the steering column. This is the end that actually goes onto the steering box. Bearing sits about there. And I've just milled 2 flats on it. So the 3/4 double D just slides straight on there. So that is now your join between your Toyota power steer motor and your Sigma column. So that's using the 3/4 double D. If you're going to use this, the original Toyota one, which I think is preferable to do, but it does mean a little bit of extra work, because instead of just milling 2 flats, you're going to have to cut some splines. But if you have this shaft, it's internally splined in here, which means you've got to get this shaft out. Now it's not really difficult to get out. The problem is that you've got nothing to hang on to. Luckily you don't have to worry about preserving the splines here, because you're going to throw those away. So I'm just going to put a piece in the vise and I'll show you how to get this out. Alright, so this is the shaft, and you need to get this spline out. Alright, so I've got another one here and I've put it in the vise here. And all I've done is make up a very, very simple slide hammer. So all this is a piece of threaded rod. I've got a bit of a weight on there, put a nut on that end, and it just comes straight out. It's a little bit tighter than that because this one's been in and out a couple of times. It's a little bit tight because Toyota puts a little dent into this outer shaft here to help lock it onto that spline. But it does come out quite easy. If you make a little slide hammer like that, it will come out quite easily. So then you've got this piece here that fits straight onto the bottom of your Toyota column. So then when you go to put your Sigma column on, you need to spline that to suit the inside of that there. I'll show you that in the milling machine in a moment, but that's basically how you're going to join up the bottom end. Now on the outside of the shaft, I'll take that off just for clarity, what you want is you want to make up something like this. It bolts onto those two holes there. It's just a large diameter, it says 2-inch exhaust tubing, and this is part of the original Sigma column. The original bearing out of the Sigma column goes into there, and then your Sigma shaft goes straight in. So to make this up, fairly simple, make up a round ring to fit on there, then you weld your exhaust tubing onto that round ring. Now what I've done is I've made up this little aluminium adapter, and that just taps into that hole there, and then the Sigma column taps into that. Now what I've done is I've put a shoulder on that edge there, so that'll go in and stop, but I haven't got a shoulder on the inside edge, so that can slide in as far as it likes. And I've made that a reasonable fit so it doesn't move around. But what it gives you, when it's all put together, is it gives you back the collapsibility that's built into this bottom end of the Sigma column. So if you have an accident and the steering box comes flying up through the firewall, this will slide up inside here. So that's a good way of getting your collapsibility back. The other thing is, if you use this particular joint, sorry, this one here, this has got quite a long spline. So if you spline the bottom half of your column quite long, that will slide up inside here whilst the outside is sliding in as well. For some reason, Mitsubishi never bothered with a collapsible part on the top of the column, which actually makes things a bit easier for this particular modification. Now the top half of the column, you need to cut this down. So you cut off roughly that amount there. So it's just near the holes there. So you need to cut that amount off. And the beauty of this is that once you have cut that piece off, you have this splined part here, which is what this part of your column fits on. I think we can get, oh no, I can't get that out. Anyway, that slides straight onto there. But what you want is you want your original top half of the Sigma column with this adjuster and everything to slide onto here. And just by sheer fluke, this part of the Sigma column, where it's actually expanded out, is a perfect fit onto your Toyota column. How good is that? You couldn't have planned that well. There's a clamp that goes onto there, the original Sigma clamp. So the only thing you need to do, you need to cut a bit off it to get it to fit right up here, and then you need to put a couple of slots in it so the clamp can clamp back down on it. So I'll just assemble this in a moment, and I'll show you how it looks when it is all assembled. Right, so depending on whether you've decided to go with the Borgeson join and the 3/4 double D, or the spline shaft, this is a Sigma inner column, the bottom part of the column, which I have splined to that internal Toyota spline. So that'll just slide into there now, and you've got a perfect join. Like I say, if you make your spline fairly long, you've got a long spline in there, this will still have some collapsibility in it as well. So you put back the collapsibility that the original Sigma column had in it. But yes, you do have to cut splines. Right, when you're doing the assembly, remember I said you drill a hole through your tube there. You can look down through the hole, you can put your Allen key and then your spanner in there to do everything up. I'm not going to bother tightening it right up now. So you do up your Allen screws, put your lock nuts on, and then bolt your new outer column on. without tightening everything right up solid now, that's basically what your new column's going to look like. So you've got your new extension up here, you've done your modifications there, all of that's pretty much standard Sigma. You retain your tilt column and everything, and this end here just goes straight onto the steering box. I haven't put the bearing back in there yet, but it's just a rubber encased needle roller bearing, so that'll go straight back in there. So that's it, that's your whole column. I've got my steering column all set to go here now. Now what I did before I started is I took some dimensions off the original Sigma column, and that's something you want to make sure you get fairly right. The holes in your mounting bracket are slotted, so you do have a little bit of wriggle room there. But according to the measurements that I made, the column from tip to toe should be 870 millimeters. So we'll just double check that we've got our 870, and that's bang on, that's right on 870 long. And I've got on the housing, I've got 654, so if we check the length of the housing, that's pretty close to 654. So with any luck, this will just bolt straight in. Now, one of the things that a friend of mine actually made me aware of, he said, how are you going to absorb the rotating torque that the motor applies to the column? And I thought that the clamping this part to this would be enough. But these do exert a fair bit of torque. So just to be on the safe side, I've made up this bracket, and it's going to bolt onto there and into the clamp itself. So I'll just put that on, and I'll let you have a look at what it looks like when it's assembled. So that's just going to drop into there. The bolts will go through these little tubes that I've put on the end. There we go. And then it'll just bolt up through these two bolt holes here and bolt the motor onto the column. Once all that's tightened up, that should be able to absorb the torque. Well, I've got the column all bolted up now, still got a few wires to tidy up and so forth. I've got a little switch here, which I got from the guy in Portugal. If you go on eBay, you'll find him easy enough, but I can always put a link in for that. This little knob here allows you to adjust the sensitivity of the steer. Now, the key's off, and steering's, it's pretty heavy to turn. So we'll turn the key on.
Yeah,
which
and then tomorrow, do you have enough?
Which activates the steer. Oh, look at that. How easy is that? Well, that's pretty amazing. So I'll hop out and we'll get the camera up underneath there so you can see how the column all fits. But that's fantastic. I'll just turn the key off. Oh, that's brought the effort back. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so here we are under the dash. You can see the little control box mounted up here. That's the thing that actually controls the steer itself. You can see the steering wheel and the column up there, and then there's the motor there, and then down onto the floor where it disappears through into the engine bay. So it all fits up there quite well. I'll get around to putting all the plastic parts back on, all that sort of stuff, and it'll just look like it's stock standard. There's the motor underneath the dash. While I wouldn't call this a simple conversion, it is fairly straightforward, and the beauty of it is everything fits in there. The steering wheel's back in its original position, the tilt column still works just like it used to, and we've got the adjustment there for the effort and so forth. So all I've got to do now is put all the plastics back on again, and she's finished. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I know it's only a brief overview, but that's how it's done.